Hello, welcome back to 1874. It's time for a match preview as Villa take on Crystal Palace at Villa Park, Saturday, 3 p.m. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by my good friend Dave Reed to look forward to said game. And this show is sponsored by Luke Roper. If you want to get 20% off everything that Luke have to offer, then use our code TVV20 and you will get 20% off everything on the Luke site just before Christmas, just before Black Friday. So I imagine you can use our code actually to add on to already Black Friday discounts and Cyber Week and all the other stuff that's going on. So yeah, do look out for that and do use that code, because I should imagine it would help you get some pretty cheap Christmas presents. David, looking like a present himself. Always enjoy it when you're present. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. Thank you. That's an interesting segue. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. It's the first time I've seen you since your big news. So many congratulations from me and the wife to you for great news. You must be in the bubble still.
Very, very much so. I've got to be honest. The way I feel about her, I've been in the bubble for a long, long time. But yeah, still in the engagement bubble. She does come very close to my love for Villa. I must say. How are you, Dave? You've been to the cinema yesterday, I saw.
Well, full disclosure, I didn't actually go. So this was a picture that, no, it's fine. It was a mum's meetup, and I got sent a picture, and I was like, it was too cute not to put on, so I put it on.
Yeah. I've jumped into what did Teddy go and see as his first film? Your first film shapes you really as a man, I would say.
It was Paddington, the new Paddington. But I must admit, from the reports I got, he didn't really watch it. He watched about 10 minutes. Okay. Then she had to go and stand outside while he cried. And then he had to go and get changed. And then he came back in and then he fell asleep. So he probably all in all saw about 20 minutes of the film.
I mean, quite apt that Teddy has gone to watch Paddington.
Exactly.
For a first film, that's pretty good, I would say. Yeah. Nothing wrong with Paddington. I've seen the first couple actually with my girlfriend's kids, and they're pretty good. Same good films. A bit to have seen, to be fair.
Well, I haven't seen any of them, so maybe I'll have to catch up. Maybe I want to watch them down the line again.
Yeah, do let us know in the chat if you've enjoyed Paddington Bear in the past, or maybe if you enjoy marmalade sandwiches. Let's move away from this nonsense, Dave. Let's talk about Villa against Crystal Palace at the weekend. Feels like a big game now. I've been saying for the last few shows that I'm not really bothered about the performance in this one. We just need 3 points to kind of put an end to this run that feels like it's come a little bit from nowhere. I think it's 4 defeats in a row now for Villa. This one just feels like let's try and get a win under our belts, and I think like everything will turn.
Yeah, 4 defeats in a row. I think that the international break came. I mean, some people think, and certainly I know players think they just want to get back out when they've had a couple of defeats in a row, or off the back of a defeat, they want to get back out as soon as possible and play. I just think for everybody, it was probably worth a bit of a reset in this international break. And I think that's probably for the players that have been at Bodymore. I know a lot of players have been away on international duty or coming back and been in the treatment room a little bit. But I think it feels like this international break came at the right time just to reset, refresh, kind of take stock of the first couple of months, 3 months of the season. And then find a way to move forward, identify the areas where things have gone wrong and move forward.
Yeah, I think as well, the defeat before the international break, I'll have that down as a decent defeat in that I thought Villa put in a decent performance at Anfield. Liverpool have been exceptional this season. It's a really tough place to go, but I thought Villa had moments and there were positives to take away from that game. I think if the international break comes after a horrific defeat, you could definitely say it was a good time, I guess. But I feel like I don't think it was a bad thing. In conclusion, I agree with what you said. It's given us a chance perhaps to get some players a rest under their belt, get a few players back as well ahead of what is really a huge week with the 3 games that Villa have across the 8 days to come from Saturday. Palace, you've already been to Villa Park recently. It's probably fair to say this will be a very, very different game to Villa's Carabao Cup exit.
You'd like to think so. I mean, Palace have been pretty dreadful themselves since the start of the season. And I think that the cup victory for a lot of outsiders came as a bit of a surprise, really, given the way that Crystal Palace had started the season. I think for Villa, you can debate the selection around that game. I thought the team for the Palace game was pretty much there. I don't really think you wanted to tinker too much with that. There was a bit of rotation. There was a bit of players needing to get minutes in there. And at the end of the day, you feel like that the team that took on Palace in the Cup was good enough to get the victory on the night. Now, it didn't transpire that way. And I think from Villa's point of view, going into this game, you talk about it being a big game. I'm not so sure. It doesn't feel to me at this point in the season like it is a massive game. Yes, it would be great if we got the win. And I think, Villa fans will be going into it expecting to get the 3 points and hoping to get the 3 points. It doesn't feel to me, it's not quite got the edge of it being a massive game for us, because I don't think, even if Villa lose the game on Saturday against Crystal Palace, I don't think all is lost in the season. You see how tight that table is. There's going to be loads of games, loads of fixtures to turn things around, but it would be really good, I think, more for the emotional well-being of supporters and just to give the players a bit of a lift that they get a victory on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think Jacob Tanswell did a piece in the Athletic a couple of days ago saying that Unai Emery's doubled down on his workload in this international break. You do feel he probably has scoured hours of footage, probably scoured back that Crystal Palace game, because Palace, pretty much other than the goalkeeper, had their first 11 out of that game. You do feel like he might have identified some things that went wrong both in that game and in terms of Villa's season in general. And I'm expecting to see some different things from Villa in this one.
I'm certainly expecting to see a little bit more intensity. And I don't think there's been a lot wrong. I think Villa have, in the past, come out on the right side of fine margins in games. And I think we kind of got a little bit of the wrong side of those fine margins, particularly against Liverpool. I thought Villa did more than enough to get a goal at Anfield and to make things interesting. It was only towards the end of the game, really, that Liverpool made the game safe. So I think I'd be looking for a little bit more intensity from some of the players. And I mean, there's players that have struggled for form over the last few weeks. So you'd like to think that they've been able to either get away on international duty and get a different environment and speak to some different people and come back a bit more refreshed, or players that have stayed at Bodymoor Heath get a bit more refreshed from just not having the kind of, there's a game in 3 days, you can have a little bit of relaxation at home, shall we say. So I'd like to think some players are just coming in for a mental reset, and you'd like to see maybe a little bit more intensity on the pitch.
We'll say, David, that we've been on international duty on the break and we've not done our pre-checks. I'm not 100% convinced you're coming through your microphone, would be my technical.
What about it if I lift it up like that? That sounds surely better.
A bit poppy oil, I thought. Wasn't convinced that you weren't coming through your AirPods. People that watch this show know that technical issues are rife. They quite often happen. Adds to the charm of the channel, I like to think. But yeah, I wasn't 100% sure you were coming through your mic, but obviously you are, Dave. Let's talk about Villa's team selection, because Emery hasn't had his press conference yet, so we do the show before the press conference every time, because we like it to have a little bit of longevity ahead of a Saturday kickoff. We've seen most of the players who were absent pictured training. Thinking of Matson, I'm thinking of Pau Torres, I'm thinking of Matty Cash. I've seen all these players, images of them training. I've spoken to journos who've told me, expect Conser and Pau Torres to be fit for this one. What are you thinking around fitness? What are your feelings?
Well, my feelings are probably like a lot of the players during this international break, that they probably didn't need this international break. Coming off the back of the summer, coming off a previous international break, a lot of games. And I think, we've seen, particularly around the England squad, a lot of players that were carrying injuries just decided that it was going to be a little bit too much to meet up with England and potentially play another 2 games in the space of a few days. So I think those players that have been carrying injuries, I think it's been worthwhile them not being on international duty just to recover for those extra few days in order to be fit for the weekend. And I think you're right. I think hopefully Villa will go into it. I think my only concern would be around Conser. I'm not too concerned about the rest of them, but hopefully he is okay. And when I say not concerned about the rest of them, I mean injury-wise. Not in terms of selection, but hopefully
Kamara and Ramsey I wouldn't think would be there.
Maybe Kamara. I think we'll obviously find out tomorrow, but Ramsey certainly not. Matson, Torres, hopefully Cash is back available, because I think if he's available, I think he will start on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with that. He'd be in the back four that I'm expecting to see at the weekend. Let's talk a little bit about Crystal Palace. I will just actually on internationals, I would expect 90% of the players that pulled out of international duty across the Premier League to be playing for their clubs this weekend. I think it was just one of those international breaks where there was a freakish amount of withdrawals, but with it in mind that, wasn't the most important international break in the world and the stage of the season and all the stuff you mentioned, Dave. I would expect 90% to line up for their teams this weekend who missed the international break. Actually, before we go on to Palace, let's talk about Morgan Rogers, because what a few weeks for him. 2 England caps now. New contract, added a year on, got a bumper pay rise. You would think, he's been Villa's form player, really. Anyway, has a couple of off games, but generally has always carried a threat for Villa this season. But nice bit of confidence for him going into this game.
Yeah, what an amazing week, 2 weeks it's been. Congratulations to him. Fully deserved it. I think always when you talk about Morgan Rogers, that clip goes viral from, I think it's a second tier podcast.
Yeah,
first
time I've seen it, actually.
It's the first time I've seen
it.
Feels like I've seen it about 1,000 times where they kind of criticise the signing and wonder what Villa had seen in him. But Emery saw a lot in him, and I don't think I'd seen that clip until the deal went through. And from what I saw of Morgan Rogers, I could kind of see the player that was there, and then the fee also made a lot of sense for Villa at that time as well. But it's been an astronomical rise, and I think it's so easy to forget he hasn't even had a year of football in the Premier League for Aston Villa. He's still less than a year into his Premier League journey, and to see the uplift in performance level to become one of the top performing players for a Champions League club. This is not a club that are striving to be in the top 10 or striving to be in Europe. He is a high performing player for a Champions League side. And given his age, given the lack of Premier League football that he's had, I just think it's a real testament to him. I know he went away in the summer, worked extremely hard. He's talked about it already, that he came back into pre-season and felt like he really wanted to, take his game to another level. He's praised Unai Emery to the hilt about the impact that he's had on him. And I think, it's always a two-way street when players are performing like he has been. It's not only down to the coaches and the manager and the environment that's set up for these players. It's often down to the motivation of the players. And you can tell he has got that internally and intrinsically, that he wants to better himself. And you can only see him going forward. Now, that's not to say that he's going to have dips, because he's a young player and all players do have dips. But I just think even if he does, there's such a quality player in there. He's going to be one of the top performing players for Aston Villa, hopefully for, could be easily 5-6 years.
Yeah, let's talk about the visitors then. Crystal Palace. Villa beat Crystal Palace 3-1 last season, but spent a lot of that second half behind, if you remember, until a John Durant thunderbolt, a Douglas Luiz penalty, and then I think a Leon Bailey finish at the end won the game for Villa at the death. I'm surprised. They've surprised me for the wrong reasons, actually, this season. You may remember in the summer in the Sky Sports News studio, somebody tipped them for top 8 in the Premier League. Can't remember who that was. I expected big things from them, bearing in mind how they ended last season. But maybe I didn't factor in a couple of big players not being there and the impact that would have. But even with those players missing, I look at their team, think it's a really good team. They should be an upwardly mobile top half outfit, I would say. But it's not quite clicked this season for Oliver Glasner, which has surprised me because he's a very good manager.
I think I was probably in the same camp as you, to be fair. And I had them in my predictions as being easily top 10. I think I was talking about even top 8, top 7 for Palace. But it feels now, and I'm very happy to admit when I'm wrong. I think Palace are going to have a really hard season this year. And I think I quite liked the deals that they've done in the summer, the transfers that they made. But I think the issue has been that those players came in too late in the window.
Yeah.
He hasn't had enough time to get into them and get them accustomed to the way he wants to play, Glasner. And the other factor is I probably underestimated just how good and how quality Michael Elise was. And it feels like there is a bit of a comparison there between when Villa lost Grealish, they tried to replace him with 3 players, Bailey, Ings and Buendia. And Palace have almost tried to do exactly the same thing. They've lost Elise, they tried to replace him with 3 players, with Kamada, with Ismail Assar and Eddie Nketiah. And those players just haven't lived up to expectation. Now, Kamada came in fairly early in the transfer window, so there's kind of no excuses there. and he, I think, is going to be suspended after he was sent off against Fulham in their last game. Ismaila Sarr has kind of been in and out of the side. I thought, if you could get the Ismaila Sarr that we've seen previously when he played in this country, I thought he would be a real quality signing. And Eddie Nketiah came in late, and I think a lot of people were expecting him to perhaps be the number 9, and he's part of those twin 10s. And is that getting the right, quality of performance out of him? Is that something that he's still getting used to 3 months into the season? And the other signings that they made as well, Trevor Chalobah came in fairly late. I think that might have been a deadline day one, Trevor Chalobah.
Yeah, it was.
Maxence Lacroix, who I think is another good signing, but again came in late in the window, and I think that's been tough for them. And Palace have got off-field issues as well with the owner. What's his future at the club? Does he want out? What's going on there? I think that's an added layer of complication really for the manager and the players. And you think back to what they did really well last season. They were excellent out of possession. Pressed really high, really intense, and then they had such great quality when they did have the ball with Eze and Elise. And you feel like this season their pressing has dropped off, their intensity off the ball isn't as good. Elise's gone, more responsibility on Eze. Teams are a lot more aware of Eze and the quality that he has, and are able to sort their game plans accordingly to kind of get him out of the game if they can. And Jean-Philippe Mateta, I don't think, has been in as good a form as he has been last season. So you put all of those ingredients into one, and Palace have struggled. And I think Opta have got their next few fixtures as the most difficult in their difficulty rating that you can get up until Christmas. So they'll be looking at this game and think, if we don't get a result here, things could be bleak up until Christmas. And you really are in a relegation fight if you're getting towards Christmas and you're still struggling at the wrong end of the table. So Palace will feel like this game's really important. And my overriding feeling now is that Palace are in a little bit of trouble this season. I don't think they're going to go down. I think a lot will rest on how are they going to treat the manager. Will they look back on last season and say you're not reflecting what you did last season this season and make a decision on the manager? Or will they decide to continue with him and say, you did so well, let's give you a bit more time to get things right at Palace?
Yeah, I think Wharton's having a bit of a bitty season as well. Eze's struggled at times, missed some big chances in big games from what I remember of watching Crystal Palace this season. I think the biggest thing you've picked up on there is the use of Nketiah, because he's always struck me as a forward player on the last defender, trying to get in behind, and you're taking away the stuff he's good at by playing him as one of those twin number 10s. And it's probably affecting Mateta as well. I'm not convinced Nketiah is the most creative of players playing behind him. I'm still having nightmares about Mateta against Villa on the last day of the season when we were on the beach. He feels stereotypically like the type of player that might cause Pau Torres problems if he's up against him in any duels or at a certain point in the game. But that use of Nketiah has been strange, and I think you're probably right to call out the trying to replace him with 3 players. That very rarely works.
Yeah, I think, and you look a bit deeper in their kind of squad building at Palace, and they've got lots of players that can play centre back, and then they've basically only got one choice for right wing back and one choice for left wing back. And I think Palace fans are kind of thinking, well, does Tyrick Mitchell have the attacking quality and the quality on the ball to give us the attacking intent that you need when you're playing that wing back formation? I mean, Daniel Munoz, I think, is a very good player. I think
he's a tidy little player. He was
the best player probably in the cup game at Villa Park for Palace, and his runs into the box are a real danger, and he's someone that Villa will have to look at and keep an eye on at the weekend. But I think when you're looking for strength in depth and how to change things, they've got a lot of players that can play centre back, and then not a lot else. I mean, the game against Fulham, they played Mark Gay in midfield and a youngster whose name escapes me, Devaney, I think, who's making his Premier League debut in there, and it's tough for a young kid to come in the Premier League when things are going against you and put in a performance. And Mark Gay, I think he only played there once or twice in central midfield. I think he played there against Villa at Selhurst Park in that game you talk about at the end of the season. So, yeah, they've had a terrible injury run. They'll be hoping to get a few players back for the game this weekend. And from their point of view, I think Will Hughes has been really important. He makes things tick in that midfield, and he's been missing through suspension. So I think he'll be back for the weekend. He's been another important player for them.
kind of covered Villa's team. Well, we've covered the injuries with Villa's team, but Villa obviously have a huge game on Wednesday in the Champions League as well. But you kind of think the gap of Saturday to Wednesday, and bear in mind it's an international break, we won't need to make too many changes across those games. And then, of course, we've got the game on the Sunday against Chelsea as well. So although it's a busy period, it does feel like those three are spread out okay game-wise.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think there'll be any thought in Unai Emery's mind about, potentially not necessarily resting players, but conserving minutes-wise. I think we've seen Morgan Rogers come off in the second halves of a number of games recently in order to, manage his minutes for games going forward. I think we'll see full intensity from the off against Crystal Palace, given the nature of the way things had gone before the international break, and given the fact that there is a little bit of a gap between Saturday and Wednesday. And I think importantly as well, I know you talked about it with Jacob before, about getting some momentum on the board ahead of the game on Wednesday, and then just having a little bit more feel good back following those defeats. I don't think for any stretch that internally and inside the camp they're pushing any panic buttons. It'll be small tweaks that they think of maybe the players have kind of dropped their level a little bit, that they then bring forward, and hopefully it works out on the pitch on Saturday.
Okay, then let's end as we always do with our hot/freezing cold takes. Terrible record at this we've got. What are you going for today, David Dangerous Reid? You always come out with a wild one. I mean, you've had the international break to stew as well. I'm dreading to think what you might have come up with for this one.
Well, usually I go Luca Digne free kick, and he did well for France, didn't he? So
yes, he did. Goal and 2 assists. Yeah.
Do I go with that, or do I go something else? No, I'm gonna plump for. I mean, hopefully Leon Bailey's fit to play. Could this be the game that he has the moment in order to kickstart his season? So I'm going to go for either a goal or assist for Leon.
Okay, nice. I'm going to go simple. I'm just going to pick a scorer. Yuri Tillemans to get off the mark in the Premier League this season with a rasping drive. That's my prediction ahead of this one. If he scores a tap in, I'll be taking the credit.
Almost a year without a penalty in the Premier League for Aston Villa. So could this be Tillemans' one? I believe so. I think it was December last year.
And Burnley game. I remember Burnley game was the last penalty I can remember us having. Douglas Luiz. Was that in December, that game?
I think it was. God,
yeah. We had loads of penalties in the first half of last season.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense the week I don't call us to have a penalty that we get one. That would make complete sense.
Obviously, Premier League there. We had obviously in the Conference League there were penalties. Yeah. Obviously, in the Premier League. Yeah,
that's huge. I didn't realise. I've got to say, I did not realise that at all. But I mean, there's not many people watching live today because of the time we're doing it. But I'm sure they would correct you if you were wrong. Someone in there would be a boffin and that would be able to correct you. So IAVFC says it's been ages without a penalty, so he obviously agrees with you. Right then, let's go. Do go back and check out the video that Jacob, or the podcast that Jacob and myself did a few days ago, looking at Villa Academy players at the moment. Some that are out on loan, some are at the club still, how they're developing, who's going to be next off the conveyor belt, who's going to be the first to be blooded by Unai Emery. There were some interesting tidbits from Jacob in there, who I found out used to play for Bournemouth from the age of 8 till 16 during that podcast. And I've since realised
he must be handy then. He must be handy.
Centre back. But he's good in the old Journos v Villa Club Media game at the end of the season. If there's one, people will be lining him up at centre back now. He has a really interesting read. I can't believe I didn't know that, but it does make sense with Jacob, because the way he talks about the game and the way he writes about the game is very unique and very good. Obviously, he's got that angle of having been a player and been involved in a lot of tactical decisions over the years, I'm sure. So do go back and check that out if you haven't done so already. Give this video a like and subscribe with your post notifications if you're watching it on YouTube. Leave us a comment as well, and wherever you're getting your podcast via audio, if you could leave us a nice review and give us 5 stars as well, that would be really, really helpful. I'll be back on Monday with Global Greg Evans to look back on the Villa Palace game, so look out for that as well, and keep your eye on your socials so you know when everything's coming. Have a good rest of the week leading up to Saturday. I'll see you all at Villa Park.